السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على ختم الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا وسندنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We'll begin بإذن الله تعالى by taking questions from the review session. And this is an important aspect, right? Because while there's merit in getting ahead in anything, but it's come from Sayyidina Ali bin Abi Talib that قِيمَةُ الْمَرْءِ مَا يُحْسِنُهُ. A person's worth is what they do well. Or مَا يُتْقِنُهُ. A person's worth is what they have perfected. And the two, ihsan and itqan, are interrelated. Because what is ihsan? Ihsan is al-ikmal wal-itqan. It is completing something and perfecting it. So that act of consolidation is more important than just rushing ahead, because really the test of where are we in the book is not what we are reading right now. The reflexive question, where am I in the book, is where am I in understanding or mastering this book. Right? And one of the great poets, Al-Mutanabbi, he has these depressing lines. Right? That, what is it? Very famous lines. He says, وَلَمْ أَرَ عِيبًا وَلَمْ أَرَ فِي عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ شَيْئًا كَنَقْصِ الْقَادِرِينَ عَنِ التَّمَامِ. I did not behold in people's bad qualities anything like for those able to fall short. وَلَمْ أَرَ فِي عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ شَيْئًا كَنَقْصِ الْقَادِرِينَ عَنِ التَّمَامِ. ولم أرى في عيوب الناس شيئا كنقص القادرين عن التمام. I'll just temporarily post it here. So if someone wants to take a snapshot, they can. Or they want to just ولم أرى في عيوب الناس شيئا كنقص القادرين على التمام. Al-Mutanabbi was a very complicated person. I'm not in any way endorsing Al-Mutanabbi as an exemplar. You can read his bio if you like. But the ulama recognize the brilliance of his poetry and his wisdom, despite his curious ways, perhaps. وَلَمْ أَرَ فِي عُيُوبِ النَّاسِ شَيْئًا. I did not see in the faults of people anything كَنَقْصِ الْقَادِرِينَ عَنِ التَّمَامِ, like those able falling short of completion, of fulfillment, you could translate it as. So that's very important. I know some of you are following the Tariq al-Muhammadiyya, some of you aren't, but next week's class is very important because we are looking at a phenomenal definition of sidq. Right? And this is from Habib Umar bin Hafiz, who, because in the Tariq al-Muhammadiyya we're looking at sidq as the opposite of kadhib. So that's sidqul lisan. But there's also a sidqul hal, and this definition is phenomenal. This is from a work by Sayyidina al-Habib Umar bin Hafiz called Mahiyat al-Tasawwuf wa Simatu Ahliha. He says, الصدق هو اجتماع جميع قوى الظاهر والباطن. Trueness entails gathering all one's faculties, inward and outward, على الأمر, upon the matter, whatever matter at hand. وذلك يقتضي al-itqan, that entails striving for perfection. Itqan is not actual perfection. Itqan, atqana, yutqinu, itqanan is true striving for perfection. Right? That's important to be clear about. Like ikhlas is not sincerity itself. It is striving. Because alaysa lil insani illa ma sa'a. Each person shall only have. So this is a warning and a promise. It's one of the scariest verses in the Quran for those striving, and one of the most hope-inspiring. وَأَنْ لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ, and that a person shall only have مَا سَعَى, what they strive for. But ma is general. You will only have what you strived for, but also that you shall have all that you did strive for. Is attainment a condition? And it's amazing. The verse continues, وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. And أَنَّ سَعْيَهُ, and all they strive for, سَوْفَ يُرَى, shall then be beheld on the day of resurrection. Or whenever Allah chooses to manifest, it will be beheld. Anyways, وَذَلِكَ يَقْتَضِي الْإِتْقَانِ بِبَذْلِ الْوُسْعِ, through expending all one's ability, al-wus'a. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, through expending all one's ability. Number one. Secondly, يقتضي الإتقان ببذل الوسع وشهود المنة للرحمن, and beholding the favor as being fully from the All-Merciful. How? And this is very important for us as students. بنفي العجب, by negating conceit. Do not ascribe it to yourself. Do not ascribe the good to yourself. Then he continues, فكما أن المخلص لا رياء له الصادق لا عجب له. So just as the sincere have no showing off, no insincerity, likewise the true have no conceit. And that is what is entailed by gratitude. Gratitude entails being true. أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا. Should I not be a servant who is truly grateful? And true gratitude is, as Imam al-Junayd said, الشكر استفراغ الطاقة. Gratitude is to give one's utmost. There's many definitions of gratitude. And of course, in this section, in the work Mahiyat al-Tasawwuf, Habib Umar, Hafidhahullah, explains out. This is just the definition. He unpacks it. You can see it there. And this is also available in translation. Sufism and the qualities of its whatever, translated by Ustad Amjad Tarsin. And it's very useful for students to know because it has the Arabic text and it has the translation. Though it's better for you to do without the crutch and to struggle with the Arabic itself. And there's, I believe, a Dar al-Minhaj edition of it, both online and available for purchase. So that's just something we wanted to share, this definition from this work, Mahiyat al-Tasawwuf. Do you have the work Sufism translated by Ustad Amjad? Yeah. So inshallah, this is, and alhamdulillah, we have actually a teaching of Habib Umar's of this text on Seekers with I think Shaykh Abdul Rahman Khan translating it, I believe, or Ustad Amjad translating, or both of them translating it. Yeah, but we have the text with somebody capable translating it. I forget whom. Okay, so that is a little bit on being true, and part of being true as a talib ilm is this definition. Right? And that's mahabba. These are all interrelated concepts. What's mahabba? One of the great definitions of love is al-mahabbatu an tahaba kullaka liman ahbabt. Love is that you gift, you give all, you give your entirety to the one you love. حتى لا يبقى لك منك شيء, until nothing of you remains for you. Right? And these are interrelated realities. The reality is one. That's why Abu Madian says in his poem, تملكتم عقلي وطرفي ومسمعي وروحي وأحشائي وكلي بأجمعي. تملكتم, you have taken possession. تملكتم عقلي, my mind, وطرفي, my gaze. تملكتم عقلي وطرفي ومسمعي, and my hearing, وروحي, and my soul, وأحشائي, and in all my limbs, وكلي, and my entirety, بأجمعي, fully. Of course, that's not something you talk to people about. So it says, وَأَوْصَيْتُمُونِي أَلَّا أَبُوحَ بِسِرِّكُمْ, and you advise me not to disclose my secret. فَبَاحَ بِمَا أُخْفِي تَفَيُّضُ أَدْمُعِي, but then what I hid was disclosed by my incontrollable tears. And then it continues. That's outside the scope. But yeah, Abu Madian's poetry, for those who know some Arabic, is some of the clearest of the great poetry of the spiritual masters. Anyways, that is a separate but deeply related matter. Okay. So let's start with the questions. Said Abdul Latif. There were some questions.
Yes, sir. Uthman collected all the questions.
Okay. Bismillah. No, so we took that. So if Zayd is praying, his mouth was open, a fly went in, he swallowed it, that's unavoidable. If you deliberately, the fly is coming, so you deliberately reached out, swallow, is kind of doing the floating fly routine. Is that, who do you think you are to the fly? Swallowed it. But even if it enters your mouth, you don't have to even think about it. Does it entering your mouth break your prayer? No. How do you know you swallowed it? Right? So the assumption is nobody would conceivably deliberately swallow a fly. If it went in, I mean, it is conceivable. I just shared an example. It's highly unlikely. In the normal case, a fly goes in, and let's say you swallowed it by accident. That's ignored. Okay, next question. The size of a dry chickpea. I don't know about American versus non-American, but you don't need to analyze that. Is it small or not? Right? Yeah, it's significant. So you have a small morsel of food, you can assume it's ignored. You don't have to take it out and check. Right? And the way to dispel what's that? There's two questions, right? Is it less or more? Once it's done, what do? either throw it. Of course, the sunnah with food left over in your mouth is not to swallow it after the fact. So food that's fallen, you pick it up and you eat it. Unless there's clear harm. The kid just urinated there or whatever. It's like, unless there's anything evidently dirty, you just wipe it away and you eat it. It's not obligatory, but that's the sunnah. But food that remains in your mouth, so that one piece of steak that was there for 2 hours, that you would dispose of. You wouldn't eat it. There's texts about that. It relates to the adab of eating. Next question.
Several small, and then it said you were wondering how could size of a chickpea be stuck between the teeth?
No, it could be how could a size of a chickpea be stuck between the teeth? That's not a fiqh question. That's a practical question. You could have gaps in your teeth. It could be all over the mouth. You've lost your wisdom teeth, and where the wisdom tooth was, there's some food stuck at the side. Whatever, there's loads of places it could be. So if it's possible, you've never had it, just thank Allah that you've not had that situation. Or you kept the chewing gum. If it's a little bit, it's excused. If it's a lot, it's not. If you swallowed it. Now, once you swallowed it, can you check, was it a little or a lot? No, you just have to make that judgment, A or B. There's no other option. Like on a multiple choice test, could you put an asterisk and says, well, it depends? Can you? No, there's two choices. You make them, and once you made the choice, you don't revisit it. That's making religion difficult for yourself. Okay, let me chew another piece of chewing gum till it reaches the same state and then check if it was a little or a lot. No. If you have waswasa, firstly, don't investigate at all. Even if you do have waswasa. If you don't, even then there's no call. Caution is acting on knowledge in accordance with the sunnah in the best way. So if you want to be cautious, learn, apply the sunnah, then figure out the best way. Until you've done that, your caution is to do those three things. Doing other things, that is deviating from the straight path. So it's a bit, Shaykh al-Ghani argues, and I will say that acting on waswasa is disobedience to Allah, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to take the shaitan as our enemy, and the Quran closes with a seeking refuge from the waswasa of the shaitan, which entails you seek refuge from that waswasa, mean you keep far away from the waswasa. So by following waswasa, you're disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who tell you take Allah has made shaitan your enemy, فَاتَّخِذُوهُ عَدُوًّا. So take him as an enemy. By listening to the shaitan, you've befriended him. He doesn't want to hang out with you, he just wants you to listen to him. That's his mission statement. What is your mission statement? Right? لَأَغْوِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I will misguide them all. Secondly, the Prophet ﷺ's teachings. So it's going against both Allah and His messengers. How is that? Caution. Question, if one is praying by themselves, if after the sujood they remember that they forgot to do one of the integrals, for example, the ruku', do they add a new rak'ah or they restart? No, they don't restart. If within the prayer, if you're still within the rak'ah, right, so you left the ruku', what do? Within the rak'ah, you go back to before the ruku'. You should get up, go back to standing, go into ruku' and continue from there. And you left the wajib, which is observing the order of the prayer. So you do forgetfulness, prostration. This is if you're sure. If you're sure. If you think so, you're not sure, you ignore it. The assumption of validity is stronger than I think so. It's only I'm sure without waswasa. If you're sure, but you have waswasa, you're in the I think so category. So you ignore your thoughts. It's like, if Zubair wants to marry Zubaydah, so his friend says, is she religious? Is I think so enough to marry her? Is it? No. Is this car safe to drive? Used car? I think so. No. We don't make decisions on I think so. Important decisions are only made on I'm sure. You think so, you stick with the initial assumption. By default, do you buy every car you consider? Do you? No. So the assumption, you have to know what's the initial assumption. What's the assumption? Soundness. You don't leave the initial assumption, which is soundness of your prayer, for I think so. Are you sure? But the one with waswasa, their surety is questionable. So the surety of the person of waswasa is like I think so. Doesn't really count. Ignore it. Stick to the assumption of validity. Allah does not make you accountable for more than you are able. Okay. So that's why within the rak'ah, you go back to where you were. So you enter into ruku', and then everything after the ruku' is considered, because maintaining the order between the integrals is obligatory, between the integrals themselves. So you have to do that. Now, if you got up from the two prostrations and you remembered with certainty or untainted surety that you missed the ruku', then you missed one rak'ah. So you just have to add another rak'ah. If you keep doing that, immediately go ask for counsel, because then basically your surety is questionable. Okay, while following the Imam in prayer, if one misses the ruku', don't. Simple, don't miss the ruku'. Would one treat it as missing a rak'ah and add an additional rak'ah? That's a good question. We'll take that on the forum. That needs a little bit of unpacking. That's the issue of? No. There's a person in the prayer has one of three states, which is they are the muqtadi, the masbuq, or the lahiq. Right? Al-muqtadi, the regular follower, is the one, and they're defined as من أدرك أول ركعة مع الإمام بإدراك الركوع. The one who's fully following the Imam is the one who caught the first rak'ah with the Imam, which is that they caught the Imam before the ruku'. That there. Secondly, you have the latecomer, who is al-masbuq, who is man fatathu rak'atun fa'akthar khalf al-imam, the one who has missed one or more rak'ahs behind the Imam. The third is al-lahiq, the one who fell behind. So Zubair and Zubaydah were discussing Sufi poetry all night, and they went to pray Fajr because they were camping together. So Zubair in sujood was making this heartfelt prostration, making dua in the first rak'ah for every virtue that he could remember from the poetry he recited. Zubaydah fell asleep. Zubair did second sajda, and he's ahead. So what does she fell behind him. So what does the one who fall? That's the lahiq. Right? The one who fell behind. What do they do? So we can break that down, inshallah, and you can diagram it, but we'll take that separately because it's a useful matter. It's a thinking person's question. What's the next question? Yeah, so have we taken Qada al-Fawaid? No, so that's a good question. That how many prayers have to be in one's dhimma, have to be due, and which prayers in order to be sahib tartib, right? Right? To what extent? So there's two considerations. Observing order, they're two separate issues. One is observing the order between the prayers. And in observing the order between the prayers, you have to observe the order between the fard and the wajib as well. So the witr enters into wajib. So I would advise you diagram this. The second is in missing with respect to how many prayers you have to have, like less than how many prayers require you to be sahib tartib, observe order, and beyond what are you not sahib tartib? That's a separate matter. So there, that's mentioned in Nur al-Idah and clarified in the Maraqi. And we can take that in the forum. You can, and inshallah, see Usman? And we can pose this, and you guys should discuss it out on the forum, and then, it'd be good to diagram it out from the text, right? From the text, because it's important to arrive at, to arrive at the answer. And I'll confirm it, but it's right there. But conceptually, you have to distinguish between two things. What you keep order in, which I'll give you the answer, which is the fard and witr. You observe the order between them. But there, if you write out the expression from Nur al-Idah with any critical clarification from the Maraqi, you'll see, okay, that's what you keep the order in. Second question is, how many prayers can be in your dues for you to be sahib tartib? And again, if you write out the expression from Nur al-Idah, it'll clarify it. Or if you're not adept at Arabic, you can look at your notes there. That's number one. And which prayers count in the tartib? And if you want to add another thing, what lifts the tartib? That's a third breakdown. What things lift the tartib? And it mentions that if they go beyond X, the tartib is lifted. And there they tell you that what's the number? And number two, what about witr? But if you break it down this way, you'll see the answer to that. And then, of course, once the tartib is lifted, it does not return until you've cleared your dues. وَلَا يَعُودُ التَّرْتِيبُ بِعَوْدِهَا إِلَى الْقِلَّةِ. The order does not return if like for example, someone had to make up 2,999 prayers. So now they only owe 5 prayers, 4 prayers. They have to observe the order? No. Until you've cleared your dues, the order does not return. Once you've cleared your dues, then you return to being sahib tartib. And we discussed some of the furu' related to that. Salbiya is from min sulb as-salah. Sulb is from the prayer itself. So the sajda is either sajda salbiya, which is from the prostrations of the prayer itself. What that excludes is sajdat al-tilawa or sajdat al-sahu. That's not from the prayer itself. Why is the mispprostration? No. So prostrations in the prayer broadly are 3. They're conceivably other. Sajda salbiya, which is min sulbi salah, from the prayer itself, or sajdat tilawa, prostration or recital, or sajdat sahu, or forgetfulness prostration. So if you forgot one of the integral prostrations, right, or the prostrations of the prayer itself, then the rulings previously discussed apply. Next question. No, so the thing is, you're not exploring them. You just have to make a judgment. Is the food in my mouth less than a chickpea or not? You just have to make 2 decisions. Once you've made one decision, what legal principle applies? الاجتهاد لا ينقض بمثله. One judgment is not annulled by another. Because there's no CCTV in your mouth. Correct? I hope so. Although, there's some electronic toothbrushes that they haven't taken on much because it's kind of useless thing to do. That they have little cameras. You can see your teeth as you're brushing them. Very gimmicky, but kind of useless, but it's there. And don't buy it. Most reviews say it's essentially useless. Although I can guarantee at least some of you will check it out. But stay with me. So you just have to make that judgment. Now, if you doubt it, you ignore the doubt. And you consider, you got little food in all different places. And what's the assumption? I don't know. What's the assumption? Is it a little or is it a lot? Yeah. And that's actually a rational principle as well. Right? There are 2 rational principles. They say, الأصل في الأوصاف اللازمة الثبوت والأصل في الأوصاف العارضة العدم. The basis of essential attributes is their presence. And the basis of contingent attributes is their absence. Someone says, Assalamu alaikum, and they're Muslim. What do you assume about them actually being a believer? The assumed attribute, that's considered wasf lazim. A Muslim believes in Allah and His Messenger, and the necessary matters are. You have to make sure? No. Right? Because that's considered essential attribute of a Muslim. It's either it's an essential attribute or what you assume. Right? You assume its presence. But someone being trustworthy, is that a wasf lazim or a wasf arid? Arid. So you don't doubt their iman. But you're going to start a business. Do you assume that your friend is trustworthy? No. You have a good opinion. Having good opinion is a necessary quality towards them, but trusting them, even with your secrets, you wanted to share whatever you wanted to share with a friend, should you just assume that everybody you talk to is trustworthy? No. If you do so, it's an error in your thinking. That's why the early Muslims said, "Man namma laka namma alayk." The one who tells you other people's secrets will tell other people your secrets. Because that's an indicator that they're not trustworthy. So you'd be foolish to, someone told you other people's secrets. Of course, you're obligated to tell them not to do so. There's 6 duties with respect to tail bearing, as we'll be seeing soon in the Tariq al-Muhammadiyah. You can find them in the Reliance. But that, if they gossip to you, they'll gossip against you. Why? Because they gossip to you means they're not trustworthy. Or at least there's sufficient doubt about their trustworthiness. So then you be a fool to share your private matters with them. Okay. So the same thing applies to stuff like this. That There are essential attributes and there's contingent attributes. Essential attributes are, and amongst the essential attributes of prayer is that if you're praying, you're considered to be praying. If you pray a rak'ah, the assumption is it's valid. That's an essential attribute. الأصل في الأوصاف اللازمة is الثبوت. They're assumed to be present. الأصل في الأوصاف العارضة in contingent attributes is that they don't exist. So someone tells Zubair, because Zubaydah died. They went to meet. Zubaydah was crossing the road, but she's so excited. Finally, we're going to discuss plans for Zubair to propose to Zubaydah. So she's crossing the road to go to the agreed upon meeting place. She got run over by a truck because she didn't check the road before crossing. So she died. Zubair is now considering someone else. Is it a reasonable assumption to assume any qualities about another person beyond Iman? No. She seems religious. Is that sufficient proof of religiosity? She seems to have good character. That's not sufficient proof. Now, most people don't. In the old times, they used to do that with looks. Someone's serious about how that I have to marry someone who's elegant and well-dressed. I'm sure he would be. I have to be gentle with people because most people don't think. You have to train them to think. But no, that's not a reasonable assumption either. Oh, but you came to propose for me well-dressed. Even a monkey would show up to a proposal in a suit, right? So that's an important principle to be aware of. Essential attributes and contingent attributes. One is assumed to be present, others assumed to be absent. Assuming the absence of essential attributes requires sufficient proof. Assuming the presence of contingent attributes requires sufficient proof. And in both cases, you don't have to investigate. Unless you need to, right? Okay. The Invalidator 62 states, not repeating an integral that you did sleeping breaks the prayer. Can we add an extra rak'ah so the prayer is not invalidated? Yeah. Now it's highly unlikely. But this is, for example, if somebody, from ruku', they fell asleep in ruku'. So they fell on the ground, forehead first. So their forehead hit the ground and they bounced up and sat down. Does the prostration done in a state of sleeping count? No. So then you'd have to repeat that because the prostration is an integral. There's another, or let's say someone was standing and they're falling asleep. So they remember trying to hold on to their knees. So let's say they fell asleep, but they're sure they went into ruku' before they went into sujood somehow. They didn't do, so they did the ruku' asleep. It's highly unlikely, but you could apply the principle. You could repeat that missed rak'ah to fix it. Could you explain the invalidator for the imam to follow the sujood sahu of the follower? Yeah. Would break the prayer. So let's say the imam it's Fajr time. It's Fajr time. What happens if the sun rises? What happens to the prayer if the sun rises and you're praying Fajr? Sadati. What happens with Fajr prayer if the sun rises? It's broken. So Zubair did this long prayer. If you recall, Zubaydah was 1 rak'ah behind because she fell asleep in the sujood, whatever. So now at the end of the prayer, Zubair is doing this glorious closing dua. Zubaydah couldn't help but notice that there's 90 seconds for the sun to rise. What's the ruling of following the Imam in the final salams? What is the ruling of the final salams? They're wajib. So it's wajib to follow the Imam in the wajib. But it's obligatory for her to pray within the time. She's missing 1 rak'ah, correct? So after the final sitting, Zubaydah waited for him to finish so she could get up and finish the prayer. But could she get up to make up the missing rak'ah? Yes. Because she sat, as long as she's done the integral. What's the integral? The final integral? The final sitting. So the final sitting was done. There's 93 seconds left for sunrise. Zubaydah gets up and quickly does the extra rak'ah. And she did it very fast. She did it in 21 seconds. But in doing so, she said, Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. Allahu Akbar. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar. That's not the extent of three verses. So she left the wajib. But she still has 43 seconds. Or whatever number of seconds left. Right? So, she says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. She goes into sujood. Zubair finished his prayer, but he decided to re-enter the prayer and do forgetfulness prostrations with Zubaydah. Or Zubair was still saying he's still going into his lengthy dua. So he hadn't finished the prayer. That's one scenario. You can re-enter the prayer if nothing that invalidates the prayer took place. And we took that, if you reviewed properly, you'd recall. But Zubair is still doing his final dua. So he says the dua, Allahumma inni zalamtu nafsan zulman kathira wa la yaghfiru dhunuba illa ant faghfir li maghfiratan min indaka warhamni innaka antal ghafurur rahim. And he's making dua, Allahumma ja'alni min ibadika al-mahbubin, al-shakirin, al-muhibbin, yani min ahli al-yaqeen. And then you decide to do, he came up with this dua al-ihya. Right? So basically, he had this dua that he came up with. So every chapter of the ihya, he makes a dua. Every book of the ihya, he makes a dua for. Allahumma ja'alni min ahli al-ilm al-nafi'. Allahumma ja'alni sahih al-i'tiqad. And then you go through each chapter, each book, making this long dua. He forgot the sun's about to rise. So he's still in the prayer. Zubaydah did the rak'ah that she was masbuq in, latecomer in. She did forgetfulness prostration. So she has Allahu Akbar. And inspired by him, she made a dua. Yani, Allahumma azil ma baynana min baynina. Oh Allah, remove all that is between us from between us. He says, I'm going to go into that sajda as well. So if he followed her in her sajda, what would happen? What would happen? What would happen? What would happen? It would break the prayer because the Imam cannot follow the follower, particularly in a part of the prayer. So that would break the Imam's prayer. It's difficult to conceive. It's difficult to conceive of, but if it did happen, this would be the ruling. If it did happen, this would be the ruling. Any other questions? since the reading from the mushaf breaks the prayer, what is the best thing to do when you see the person next to you in prayer reads from a mushaf? We do not object to matters where there's difference of opinion. Simple. There's no discussion about that, right? And people, your madhab is not an identity, right? So if your friend's reading from a mushaf, is this allowed within the 4 schools? Yes. So they say, al-ammi la madhhab lahu. The unlearned person does not have a madhab. Now you don't have to go analyze someone that you are Hanafi, why are you reading from a mushaf? No. Maybe they're following another madhab in this. That's none of your business. La inkara fi masail al-khilaf. There's no condemnation, matter of difference. Now, if you know them well and they're a student of knowledge, then it would follow the fiqh of nasiha, of advising. But you only advise with something that you are hopeful that the other person will benefit from. And if you don't know the person, you don't correct in those things. There's some things that there's difference of opinion about, like for example, pointing your toes towards the qibla. In the Shafi'i school, it's obligatory. In our madhab, it's sunnah. So someone's not pointing their toes towards the qibla in prostration. There are certain things you would definitely advise them for, unless you feel that they're so, that it would turn them away or cause them whatever, but you can say it in a nice way. Yesterday I was praying with somebody. They're a religious young man, and they didn't point their toes towards the qibla. So I was just joking around. I just told him in his ear, by the way, remember your toes. I was feeling lazy. My bad. And they were really happy about it. Right? But I know the person well. So they're actually really happy because, when they get together with their friends, sometimes 1 o'clock at night, they send me fiqh questions. They're interested in doing the right thing. But some random uncle who's not looking religious, even those things you have to consider carefully. That would this be of benefit or not? But something like this, you don't. If you know them, and that, so this is a matter, we know that there's difference of opinion. We do not problematize that. Particularly if you're in a diverse community. If you're in a place where everybody's Hanafi, then one of the things to do, Abu Talib al-Makki in Qut al-Qulub says, that if you point someone, whether related to commanding the good or nasiha, amr bil ma'ruf or nasiha, if you point them to a person of knowledge that they could reach, you've discharged your duty. And sometimes that's good to do in sensitive matters. You don't know how to handle it, but it's your friend. And then, that's where there are Hanafis who are strict on this. Very strict. There are some Hanafis who will take from other madhabs, particularly with respect to their nafil, prayers, etc. Right? Personally, if someone wants to do extra Quran, memorize some. Ahlan wa sahlan. Right? Memorize and recite from your memorization. You want to read Quran? Separate duty. Pray with what you know and recite from what you haven't memorized. And let it be an incentive to memorize Quran. If you memorize 1 page a week, you would memorize more than 2 juz a year. 1 page a week. We have a distinguished Qari, Shaykh Abdullah. How long does it take to memorize one page of Quran? How much time? لكم وقت يأخذ؟
والله ممكن يأخذ نصف ساعة.
Okay. So الشيخ الشخص العادي يعني.
لا العادي يأخذ فيه يوم. طول عليه.
لكن تقريبا كم دقيقة؟
يعني لو أخذ فيه 1 hour كويس جدا.
So الشيخ عبد الله السراج كم سنة تدرسون القرآن؟
لا حفظت وأنا عندي 4 سنة.
والآن فلكم so Shaykh Abdullah has memorized the Quran قبل 85 سنة.
طبعا.
85 years ago, he memorized Quran, right?
نعم.
So he knows a little bit about Quran. We have Shaykh Abdullah Siraj, who doesn't only know the 10 qira'at, he knows the 14 qira'at, including the 4 qira'at al-shadha.
انا خرجت 4 4
Yeah.
14 هم.
Yeah. So he's saying that the common person could comfortably memorize the Quran in an hour. In an hour. Could memorize 1 page of the Quran in an hour comfortably. Someone becomes used to it, could memorize a page in about half an hour.
نعم ممكن تاخذ منه نصف اور اذا كتب البيج.
And he said if the person writes out the page, they could,
ويكون الشيخ رتيله عليه.
yeah, if they take 2 extra steps, this is a valuable point of benefit,
وانك لا ترقى القران.
that if you write out, if you listen to it from a sheikh and you write out the page, you can memorize it in half an hour. Right? So that's, so there's a wisdom. It's not even what I know that يعني هل المشايخ يستحسنون أن يقرأ الناس في التراويح من المصحف؟
والله يعني الحنفي
مم.
قال لك نو خالص مصحف. الشافعي
لكن هل يستحسن المشايخ أن
والله
يمسك
لا-
الناس
لا، أنا
المصاحف؟
بس عشان على اساس انه يعني اذا لم يجد احدا يفتح عليهم.
نعم. لكن عامة الناس في التراويح مثلا يمسكوا المصحف خلف الإمام؟
غلط.
No. So like even in Taraweeh, to hold the Mus'haf behind the Imam, Shaykh Abdullah Siraj says is ghalat. And ghalat in Arabic is an intense word. It's not just khata. Ghalat is a big mistake.
خطأ. نعم.
It's not the right thing to do.
انك انت تشتغل في المصحف.
Because
هتترك الصلاه لله. هتترك متابعتك للامام.
he said, because then so that you're praying for Allah. So you're getting busy with the text from what you're supposed to do. Right? And it'll distract you from proper following the Imam, lead to unnecessary actions, etc. So that's what the people of learning mention. So we're going to break for. So we're going to stop the Q&A here. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.